There is something the universe does when it has run out of subtle hints. And if you are watching this, it has already started doing it. Not the gentle nudges, not the quiet feelings you kept dismissing. This is the version where things stop, where doors close so completely you cannot even find where they used to be. Where the life you were living, the one you built carefully, the one you defended, the one you were exhausted by, but at least understood, simply stops cooperating. Most people call that a breakdown. They are not entirely wrong, but they are missing the most important part of what is actually happening. Because there is a pattern inside the collapse. And once you see it, once you really understand what is being done and why, the feeling in your chest, that specific tightness, that sensation like something is sitting on your sternum and will not move, begins to shift into something else entirely. Stay with me, because what I am about to show you changes how you understand everything that has stopped working in your life. There are 7 signs that what you are experiencing is not failure, that it is not punishment, that it is not proof of some fundamental flaw in who you are. And the last one, the 7th, is the one that most people find hardest to explain away, because it does not just happen around you. It happens through you. The first sign is that everything stopped at once. Not one thing, not a hard season with one particular area of your life. Everything. You know this feeling. The relationship and the job and the sense of direction all went quiet in the same season. Or the finances and the friendship and the identity you had carefully maintained all became unstable within weeks of it. It felt mathematically precise, like something coordinated it, like the timing was too exact to be coincidence. You probably told yourself it was just stress causing more stress. That one collapse triggered the others. That is partly true, but it is not the whole story. Researchers at the University of North Carolina, studying what they call post-traumatic growth, found something that should change the way you understand this. Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun documented that the most significant personal transformations in human lives are almost never preceded by single setback. They are preceded by what they call seismic events, disruptions large enough to destabilize the entire existing structure of persons. Not one wall, the whole building. The reason everything stopped at once is that one thing stopping would not have been enough. The universe does not send a tap on the shoulder when it is trying to redirect something this significant. It sends a controlled demolition. You are not failing. You are being evacuated. The second sign is that the harder you pushed, the worse it got. Think back to when this started. What did you do first? You probably did what every capable, determined person did. You worked harder. You stayed later. You applied more effort, more discipline, more willpower to the thing that was not working. And it got worse. Not because you did it wrong, because effort applied in the wrong direction does not solve the problem of direction. It deepens it. There's a principle in Taoist philosophy, Wu Wei, that has no perfect English translation, but means something close to the kind of action that does not force. The ancient teachers observed what modern researchers have since confirmed, that certain kinds of resistance, certain types of forcing, create more friction than forward movement. That there are moments when the correct response to a stuck door is not to push harder. It is to stop, to look, to wonder whether you are pushing on the wrong side entirely. Marcus Aurelius wrote it differently, but he meant the same thing. The obstacle, he said, is the way. Not the obstacle is something to overcome. The obstacle is the path itself. When your pushing made things worse, that was not evidence of your inadequacy. That was the first real piece of information. The universe was not ignoring your effort. It was telling you something specific about your direction. Open your eyes to what stopped first, because the first thing to close is almost never what it appears to be. The third sign is that something you were afraid to lose actually left, and you survived it. This one is quiet, subtle, easy to miss in the noise of everything else. There was something in your life, a relationship, a role, a version of yourself that you were certain you could not live without. You organized around it. You made compromises for it. You told yourself that whatever was wrong with your life, at least you had that. And then it left. And you're still here. Not unaffected. Not unchanged. But here, Carol Dweck at Stanford spent decades studying what separates people who recover from setbacks from those who do. What she found was not intelligence or talent or resources. It was the ability, often discovered involuntarily, through exactly the kind of loss you experience, to separate identity from outcome. To find, in the aftermath of losing something that felt definitional, that the self underneath was still intact. You did not know you could survive that loss until you survived it. That is not a small thing. That is the universe showing you the floor, showing you that there is solid ground beneath the life you were living, ground you did not know was there because you were never forced to stand on it. The loss taught you something about your own depth that the having never could. The fourth sign is that something new appeared in the gap. Not immediately, not while the dust was still in the air, but in the quiet after the collapse, something arrived that had no space to arrive before. A conversation that would not have happened if the old structure was still standing. An idea that surfaced only because the noise of the previous life had gone silent. A version of yourself that was never permitted to exist while you were busy maintaining the life that just ended. This is the pattern that skeptics most often dismiss as selection bias, as pattern recognition applied retroactively. They say, you would find meaning in any sequence of events if you looked hard enough. And they are right that humans are meaning-making machines. But here is what the skeptic's analysis misses. Tedeschi's research does not claim that the universe intends your growth. It documents that growth occurs. That transformation is measurable. That people who pass through seismic collapse and find coherent meaning on the other side demonstrate statistically significant increases in life satisfaction, relational depth, and sense of purpose compared to both their pre-collapse selves and to people who experience similar events without meaning. The mechanism matters less than the outcome. Something appeared in the gap, and you noticed it. That noticing is not delusion. It is the beginning of reconstruction. The fifth sign is that your body knew before your mind admitted, before the collapse became visible, before the relationship ended, or the job fell apart, or the finances became impossible to ignore. Your body already knew. There was a knot, somewhere between your stomach and your throat, a specific tightness that arrived in certain rooms, during certain conversations, at certain times of the morning before you were fully awake and still defended by logic. You called it anxiety. You called it stress. You called it being sensitive. It was information. Epictetus, a man who was born into literal slavery and became one of the most influential philosophers in human history, said that character is not revealed in comfort. It is revealed in adversity. But he also said something less quoted, that the first act of wisdom, attention, not analysis, not strategy, attention. Your body was paying attention long before you were willing to. The tightness in your chest during that meeting, the exhaustion that sleep could not fix, the way a particular version of your own life made you feel smaller every time you returned to it. That was not weakness. That was your body refusing to pretend. The collapse was not the beginning of this story. Your body registered the true beginning months, sometimes years, before the external world caught up. You already knew. You just were not ready to know that you knew. But what comes next is the sign most people find hardest to explain away. Because this one does not just happen around you. This one happens through you. The sixth sign is that you became someone the old version of your life could not contain. Sit with that for a moment. Because there's a version of you that exists right now, a way of thinking, a depth of understanding, a capacity for a different kind of life that could not have been built inside the structure that collapsed. Not because you were not capable of it before, because the life you were living had no room for it to develop. Some of you lost a relationship that felt like home and discovered in the silence after that you had never properly heard your own thoughts. Some of you lost a career that felt like identity and found underneath it a person who wanted something entirely different. Some of you had the version of yourself that other people expected simply stop being maintainable, and in a moment that felt like devastation, something more true quietly stepped forward. This is the part that cannot be fully explained by randomness. Not because the universe has a blueprint with your name on it, but because the person standing on the other side of a genuine collapse is demonstrably, measurably, irreversibly different from the person who, and that person, the one you are in the process of becoming, required the collapse to exist. You're not the same person who began losing. You will not be by the end of this. The old life did not fit the person you were becoming. The collapse was not the universe abandoning you. It was the universe refusing to let you stay too small. The seventh sign is the one you have been resisting. You already know things are different this time. Not different in the way where you have felt hopeful before and been disappointed. Different in a way that is harder to articulate and somehow more trustworthy, a quieter knowing, a sense even underneath the fear, even through the grief, Even on the days when the tightness in your chest comes back and the future feels completely opaque, that something is in motion that you did not initiate and cannot entirely control. That is not magical thinking. That is meaning-making in real time. That is the mind doing exactly what Tedeschi documented: rebuilding coherence after seismic disruption, finding narrative structure in events that felt purely chaotic, creating the conditions under which transformation becomes not just possible, but inevitable. But here is what I want you to understand about that now. It does not require you to be certain. It does not require you to be brave or healed or past the hard part. It does not require you to have figured out what comes next or to have stopped grieving what ended. It only requires you to be willing to consider, just for a moment, just long enough to feel it, that what stopped working stopped for a reason you have not fully understood yet. That the life that ended was too small. That the version of you still being formed is more honest than the one that fit inside it. That the universe is not careless with people who pay attention. And you have been paying attention. Otherwise, you would not still be here. So let me take you back to where we started. There is something the universe does when it has run out of subtle hints. You thought that was a warning, a description of crisis, something to brace against. But I want you to read it again with everything you now care. When the universe runs out of subtle hints, when the nudges stop and the doors close, and the structure you built quietly refuses to hold, it is not withdrawing from it. It is trusting you with something larger. The collapse is not the story. You are the story. The collapse is just the part where the old chapter ended and the new one did not have its first sentence. You're in that space right now, between the sentence that ended and the one that has not been written. And if I'm honest with you, which I intend to be, that space is one of the most important places a person can stand. Tell me in the comments, what was the first thing that stopped working? And what appeared in the quiet after? I want to read your story.